It's the Kyle Hyman Show on Redeemer Radio.
This is Kyle Hyman, and joining us to talk about her book, Marketing God, Inspired Strategies for Building the Kingdom. I'm so excited about this. Donna Heckler, thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Kyle.
What is one of the best ways that you've seen somebody market God, as you put it in the title of your book?
So I think one of the best ways that I've seen people market God is to really understand what they're trying to communicate and be true to that. So if we think about marketing from sort of a brand perspective, we're making a promise. And as we make a promise, we need to honor that promise. So as an example, if you have a parish that talks about being very friendly and very open and welcoming, but nobody welcomes you when you walk in, it's not living up to its promise.
Right.
So I tend to see the best success when somebody knows who they are, when a parish or a ministry knows who they are, and they honor that and live up to that.
I mean, that's kind of what we're accused of a lot of the churches, being hypocrites, right? Saying one thing but doing another. So we say we love everybody, but then do we actually look like that when people come to our church? So you're saying it's just like being authentic and practicing what you preach is kind of the best form of marketing.
Absolutely. So to me, it's one of the many things. When I think about marketing, I think about a path towards loyalty. From my corporate days, that's what marketing was all about. How do I authentically talk to consumers in a way that matters to them, that gives them information about a product or a service that is relevant to their lives, and then as they begin to use it more and more, become loyal to my product or service. And that's the framework that I was using as I thought about this book, Marketing God. How do we help people step through and use a parish or use a ministry in a repeated fashion so that over time they're becoming loyal to God as well?
Well, and I think people might, whenever you hear Marketing God, might have like a bad taste in their mouth, because the idea of marketing, as you describe it, sounds great. But maybe as people experience it, is some kind of manipulation to get somebody to buy something that they don't actually need so that you can make some money. Or we don't want to be associated with that necessarily.
Right. Not at all. Well, I have to tell you, I was the first one. I hated the title. And I'll tell you, the title came to me at Mass. And God and I had a bit of an argument about it, because I felt like it was troublesome, was sort of a nice way of putting it. But I thought, what if this is blasphemous? What if it's sacrilegious? This just doesn't feel right. And I'm a marketer, so I know the ins and outs of marketing. And in prayer, the thing that kept coming to me was, if you can help people be loyal to batteries, can't you help them be loyal to me? And I couldn't argue with that, Kyle. I couldn't argue with that. So I thought, okay, let's put it out there. Let's cause the conversation. Let's see if there's different ways of helping people connect with our faith, connect with the church, and ultimately connect with God.
So can you give us an example of one of your ways that we could be better at marketing God?
So there's so many. One of the ones that I certainly think about is thinking about our parish as a brand, and I sort of referenced that. But another thing that I talk about is, simple things like, what is our tagline? And does that tagline, is there a phrase, is there something that's connecting truly with the parishioner or the person that you're trying to reach? Another thing that we talk about are associations. And one of the beautiful things about our faith is that we have so many wonderful associations. So we have Mary, we have St. Francis, we have St. Joseph. And those are not just saints. They're not just wonderful figures for us, but they are also deeply meaningful. And if we can understand that meaning and carry that forward in what we do, then all of a sudden people will become connected to that, because they understand at a much deeper level of who these people are and what they might mean for the ministry or the parish that's using that name.
Well, with talking about parishes and stuff, I think a lot of times when we think of parish marketing, just to be honest, we probably associate it with poorly designed things and things that don't look very professional, things thrown together by a volunteer or somebody that, isn't really familiar, just throwing some clip art on something and calling it a day. How important is it that our materials, the things that we're putting out there in public, the things that we're trying to share, the message that we're trying to share, how important is it that it looks professional?
So I think that's really critical. One of the things we talk about in the book is that brand that I reference, it's a promise that we're making. And all the various ways that we communicate with people, be it in terms of how we do creative, be it what we put online, be it what we do with social media, be it how we interact with people, all come back and reflect on that brand. So if you end up with creative that doesn't really speak to what your core message is, if it doesn't really communicate your promise, if you're trying to be something, again, we'll pick on very friendly, but the creative doesn't feel that way, it is going to disrupt people's impressions of you. So it's important that we have creative that truly speaks to who we are as a parish and conveys that in a professional manner. The other thing that I would offer is that people see over 6,000 images a day, and that doesn't include everything that's on the internet. So the challenge we have is how do we break through all of that? And if we just take like a bunch of clip art and put it on something, it's just going to wash over people. They won't even see it. And a big part of what we want to do when we're doing our creative is have it sort of cut through what we call the clutter that is sort of filling up everybody's mind. How do we help our parish cut through that clutter and sort of rise to the top so people are like, yeah, you know what? I want to make sure not only that I go to Mass on Sunday, but I'm going to join this particular ministry or this particular group. So there's a lot of things that creative does for us. So long-winded answer. I think it's important.
Well, and I'm kind of just thinking of different examples of maybe a document that just has way too much information on it, or doesn't have the pertinent information bolded so you can find out the time, the location really easily, things like that. What are some of the most common mistakes that you see in people on the parish level or with other organizations?
Right. Well, I think one of the most common mistakes is that they don't understand who they actually are and what their core message is. And so if you don't understand what your core message is and what it is that you're doing that's unique and different in reaching your parishioners, if you don't understand that and define that, then that's not going to show up in any of the work that you do.
We're talking with Donna Heckler. The book is Marketing God, Inspired Strategies for Building the Kingdom. And when you talk about this, almost taking a step back and looking at what our purpose is and really kind of getting to the, before we start spreading a message, what is the message that we want to spread? How do you suggest that we get back to those basics and kind of ask some of those more important questions? Right.
So, within the book, there are a lot of questions after each chapter for reflection, and some of those can really help us get to that point. So I'll put that out there, that's one tool. Another tool that I like to use is what I call the so what test. And literally you list all the various things that you do, all the various features or programs or things that you offer, and you ask the question, so what? So what if we do these things? And what you're trying to do is get to the benefit. What's the benefit of these various activities? And you start to identify the benefit, and then you say, so what? Again. And you're trying to take everything to a deeper level, because ultimately what you're trying to understand is what's that emotional connection? What is that deeper place? And I think too often we get so clouded with all the stuff that we don't go deep. So something as simple as laying it all out and asking, so what, until you get to a point where you go, wow, this really is what we're about. This is us. This is our promise. This is what we need to convey. It's a simple way of trying to get to that point of clarity.
And how much do you think that this is kind of universal from parish to parish versus each parish needs to really examine this on their own? Because sometimes I feel like we're just reinventing the wheel and somebody else is already doing it well that we could just copy. But then sometimes it's probably specific to our particular parish, our environment, and how we approach things.
So that's a wonderful question. I think on one level, there is some consistency, right? But what makes it different is what I would call in the secular world the consumer. Who is the person who's walking into the parish? And those people walking into the parish, typically, there's this sort of line, the birds of a feather flock together. They live in the same area. They have similar types of behaviors and things that they want to do, things that motivate them and are meaningful to them. So assuming that there's truth to that, then people who are in the general area of a parish may have different needs. Mm-hmm. And so as much as we can make sure that as a parish we're speaking to the needs of our population, and we understand that clearly, and we can bring our message forward to them in a way that is not only meaningful, but it's relevant and importantly motivating. It helps them take action to be more actively involved. I think that's where we can have more clarity by parish.
So all of this sounds great if you work for the parish, if you're the parish priest, maybe if you're a pretty active volunteer or coordinating one of the ministries or something like that. What about for the average person in the pews? What should we know about marketing God, either through an evangelical sense of we're sharing the gospel with our coworkers and things like that, or in other ways?
So my sense is that brands are something that everybody has a role in supporting. And I would say that is very true, and almost more true for us in the Catholic faith. Who is our parish? What are we saying? And how can we communicate that? Because it's one thing if a newcomer hears it from the priest or somebody who's leading a ministry. But when that message is reinforced by a friend they meet on the street, that is where the promise of that brand really begins to live.
Yeah, I like that. One of the things that you have 40 different chapters, or truths, as you call them, 40 different truths. Mm-hmm. And each one starts off with a scripture verse, which I think helps us plant this. And this is something that is something we should be doing as Christians. Can you give us an example of something in scripture that helps prove one of the points that you're making in the book?
Sure. So one of the most fundamental elements of marketing, start on the secular and bring the verse into it. One of the most fundamental parts of marketing is that you have to be available. So I used to do the marketing at Energizer, and we would say, we will never sell a battery if you don't have the batteries on the shelf at a store. So it has to be available, right? Uh-huh. And the verse that struck me, the second I heard it, here I am. Here I am, Lord. Here I am. I have to be available. We will never get to loyalty if we ourselves are not available to help carry the word. So those verses, it was interesting to me because as a secular marketer, I thought, oh my gosh, I know all these strategies. We'll see if we can find a Bible verse for each one. Are you kidding me? There were 5 or 10 Bible verses for each truth that I found. It's just laid right out there. Here I am, Lord. Be available. The idea that a brand is a promise, and that promise has 2 parts. You have to not only say what you're going to do, but you have to do what you say, right? Which is typical of a promise. And then you think about the Bible verse about a cup, that you can't just clean the outside of the cup. You got to keep it clean on the inside too. Mm-hmm. Those Bible verses were transcending everything that I was thinking about marketing as I was working on this book.
Well, I'm so excited about this. I feel like we can all benefit from this, but especially anybody that's involved with a parish or a ministry of some sort, even volunteers and stuff. But everybody be good to pick this up. So where can people go to find out more about you and get a copy of the book?
Oh, well, thank you so much for asking. You can always get a copy of the book on Amazon. The publisher is OSD, Our Sunday Visitor, so you can also always get a copy there. And I have a website. I do a lot of speaking and writing, and my website is DonnaHeckler.com, and look for it at your favorite bookstore as well.
All right. Hopefully they're marketing it well as well. It's called Marketing God, so. Inspired Strategies for Building the Kingdom. Thank you so much, Donna Heckler, for sharing a little slice of this book with us. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much, Kyle. I appreciate you having me.